Hello, what's going on? It's Quentin, Agent Reads and Rambles, coming here for a brief video on something I've been thinking about a lot lately. After I'm going to go on the midnight binge, I'm about to have a coffee and hopefully read until 2 or 3 a.m. of this book that I'm very excited to talk about. I mean, I've talked about it before on the channel, but The Atlas by William T. Vollmann. I really, really enjoy this book. This is certainly one of those books that I keep going back to for its emotional insights, for its just beauty of language. But I have a very sort of complicated relationship with this book. Full disclosure, I'm not finished it. I probably won't finish the title essay. I probably will just stick to what I like in here because this book is really, really quite good. But I guess let's talk about what it is. Okay, this book is a collection of short stories, or more likely a collection of his traveling anecdotes and a few made up occurrences, right? And Vollmann has traveled just about everywhere for his journalism, and he sets a great deal of this in different places. One of my favorite stories in here, Five Lonely Nights, is, I believe, set in San Francisco, New York, Berlin, Antananarivo in Madagascar, and Nairobi, Kenya. So he's going all over the place. Even that's just like, what is it, like a 7-8 page story? He's going all over the place for this, but yeah, it's a collection of, at times it feels like anecdotes, well selected anecdotes, well groomed anecdotes, but always you get the sense that William Vollmann is actually involved in a lot of these. It's very confessional type writing, I find, in some spots. But I guess this is also more than that because there's a lot of imaginative writing in here. And one of my favorite stories about imaginative writing, it is a story, I've jumped around. I'm right here on the read through, but I've read past it and the smaller ones. And I'm at the Hill of Gold right now. But one of my favorites, imaginative pieces. Excuse me, you're gonna have to put up with my rambling and my stuttering, but you're used to doing that already, I suppose. This one's set in Goa, Goa, India. It's called Too Many Gods, and it is about some kind of god, some kind of powerful male god who finds the people abandon him, and it's a very emasculating experience for him. There's literally a stone phallus that gets knocked down. It's really, really good. I don't know why. A lot of this I like in a really subjective way. It really accesses some pretty deep, it strikes a deep personal chord with me in a way that not much other fiction does. So also what this thing is excuse me, it is a book inspired by Yasunari Kawabata's Palm of the Hand stories. And I have two recommendations once you're done with this, actually. Number one is read Yasunari Kawabata's Palm of the Hand stories. And number two is read Yasunari Kawabata's Palm of the Hand stories. They're excellent, just like this. And yeah, it's a work of short stories inspired by these Palm of the Hand stories. Yet, it is arranged in a very different way. It is a sort of thematic palindrome where you have stories number 1 to 26, and then you have this title essay in the middle, and you have stories number 26 to 1. And he says the theme, you can kind of trace it in stories 26 and 26 and 25, 25, all the way out back to 1, and the opening and closing of the book. I personally don't put that much stock into it. I really do take him at his word when he says, if you were to keep it by you as a pillow book, reading through it in no particular order, skipping the tales you find tedious, dozing amidst my somniferous paragraphs, I'd feel at last that I'd done as much good in the world as the manufacturers of our drowsiest codeine syrups. He can be quite funny, but yeah, that's a good approach to this book. I take him at his word when he recommends that because this is an excellent nighttime, put it on the nightstand. Okay, I want to flip through a couple pages of this. Let me just see what's going on in this one. Oh, I like this one. This one's page count is small. Let me check that out. It's a very good book for that type of thing. In terms of the stories themselves, they vary widely in quality. They vary a lot in topic, too. I have on a good authority, mostly leaf by leaf, that this actually is like almost like it really represents his career well as a whole. You have his, of course, his sort of controversial focus on prostitution in this. He loves that. He loves thinking about it. And I love those stories personally. That is the side of Vollmann, other than his focus on poverty, that and they kind of converge, but that's the focus on Vollmann that I am particularly interested in, is, those works that he's talking about, prostitution, stuff like the royal family really interests me. Although it's going to be a while. Of course, I got to get through Seven Dreams. Everyone knows about the Seven Dreams, and they seem great. Too bad they probably won't be finished. But where the hell was I? Yeah, it's on a lot of different topics. So prostitution is one. You have a lot of social issues being sort of talked about here, like some of the LA riots, in Bad Air, the race riots, I believe, in, like, what was it, the 90s or something? I don't know exactly. I read that one a while ago. I'm forgetting this, right? You also have his travels in places like Sarajevo, where he feels like there's a dot on the back of his head that he can get shot at any time. You have a lot of that stuff, but you also have a lot of random stories where it's just a series of things that are happening when you're at a bus stop, and that one is just called "What's Your Name?" And it's a whole bunch of people saying their names are different things, and that's it for 2 pages. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in terms of the topics of this. He's all over the place. It's very much it's not an atlas of the world. I mean, in part it is, I guess, because he's traveling from place to place so extensively. So it's in part that, but it's also a map of his mind, a map of everything that makes him tick as a person. And that is, I think, where that comparison with his whole career starts to come from. I'll show you the gazetteer. Gazetteer. See that? So it is the one page, those pages, and then there's two more, So there's basically like a 6-7 page gazetteer. He's been all over the place. You're really going to go around everywhere. There are a few places like Limbo that are not on the map at all. It's cool. It's cool. It's a great read if you don't take it too seriously. All the tedious stuff, and believe me, there is tedious stuff. All the tedious stuff, I just kind of chuck it in the recycle bin and say, screw it. I'm not going to bother with this right now. And that's the best way. Maybe this isn't one of the best books I've ever read, but it's certainly one of the most enjoyable because there's no pressure for everything to be good. You know, if something doesn't connect, you just skip it. What was the one that I didn't really like? I didn't like an old man in old grayish hammocks, which was, I think, set in Nunavut, about some of the indigenous up there, and I just found almost nothing to be going on in that story. So I was like, whatever, not gonna read this ever again, probably. Just like Animals, another one I just didn't care about whatsoever. The Atlas, I found that so freaking tedious. Like, sure, if you want prose fireworks, they're there, but my God, was that ever tedious. That's about a 68-page essay right in the middle of this, kind of explaining that Atlas concept in a way. But yeah, it's good. I suppose I'll just tell you about some of my favorite stories. Probably one of the best, easily one of the best. It's called The Prophet of the Road. That is a story about Vollmann and another guy who they're driving around in, I think it's like northern Manitoba or something like that. And, I'm from northern Ontario. The mosquitoes are real. Like, they're bad, bad, bad. And in The Prophet of the Road, what you have is these two people are driving up and they pick up a hitchhiker because they see a hitchhiker, and this guy is just, there are mosquitoes everywhere. And they pick him up and he escapes the mosquitoes. They're smearing they're wiping the windshield, and mosquito blood is going all over the place. The bodies are fucking everywhere. It's annoying. It's annoying big time. And they come across this woman on the road who is dancing, right? And they see her from far away. And as they get closer, they realize she's just dancing and she's dancing vigorously. There's something really intense about the way and almost like maniacal, that she's throwing her limbs back and forth and dancing. And then what you have is, when they get there, it is a woman who's being attacked by a swarm of mosquitoes like you would not believe. And the mosquito in this becomes a metaphor for that sort of pricking little urge that Vollmann feels, where he's always wondering, how valuable is it to understand someone else's pain? How valuable is it to try to record this and just put it out there in the hopes of helping? You know what I mean? And it's just a really interesting sort of meditation on, should we take on other people's suffering? But also like the pain of actually, when you take it on, you relate to them or you understand it, and that hurts you and it's going to hurt your readers. But what's the value of that? It's a really beautiful sort of reflection. And I suppose I should have picked a spot to to read, but yeah, that's the prophet of the road. Another one I very much like. Let me get to the ye old table of contents here. Sorry, someone was messaging me on Instagram about this book, so I was like, whatever, I can just chat about it really quick. I definitely do suggest it if you like this. One thing I will say is that the structure of these stories are poo-poo. They are not very good. They could have been structured so much better. Not to brag, I have my flash fiction card. I took a workshop on flash fiction, and I know how to structure a piece of flash fiction really, really well. Not that I ever do it well, but I know. And the thing, the key to structuring them is every single loose detail, you take it out. These are not flash fiction. None of these pieces are flash fiction, methinks. But what he's going to do is just give you a very short scene, and that's it. It leads to some of this is very baggy. There's a lot of loose spots that aren't edited particularly well, if they were edited at all. But it's a really atmospheric read. Specifically, there's a point where he's talking about Thailand, and he's making, and I think it's a prostitute story in Thailand, where he's looking at where this person is. Sorry, there's a freaking attack of ladybugs in my room. I shouldn't have got so cheap of a place, but like, my God, it's been pissing me off. I just saw one behind the laptop this is propped on. I can't believe it. But there are sausages hanging all along the place that the scene is set in. It's just a really interesting way to kind of, like, I guess the word would be mise en scène. The idea of just the sausages hanging all around. There's the prostitute story, the types of people that go to the prostitutes. It all fits very well. It can also be a very funny read in some really dark ways. There's a story called That's Fine, or That's Nice, where I guess William T. Vollmann is in, I think it's like Bosnia or Sarajevo or somewhere, and he has essentially, he got out of a car or something, and then a shell drops on the car. Two of his friends die inside, and he's talking to, I think it's like a car dealer, and he says, yeah, it was destroyed, or someone who had sold him the car. The guy's like, well, what am I gonna do about the price of the car? And he's like, yeah, that's nice. What am I gonna do about, my two dead friends in there? It's humor in the darkest way possible, right? But yeah, it's just really nice. It also talks about addiction a lot, which I really, really value, and I just adore this. But I fear I've just been going on about a whole bunch of random stuff, and I'll see what I can read. I'll just read a little bit. I'll read some of Say It With Flowers, 430. I love that story. They scratch a lot of different emotional itches, although they can all be at their core linked to one idea: loneliness, which I think is fantastic. Even the addiction stories, there are a bunch of great addiction stories close to the center story, but like the best way to drink beer, the best way to shoot H, the best way to smoke crack. It's just really, really beautiful, incisive studies of addiction in a whole bunch of different places. Also, lots of Canadian stuff. I dig that. Who doesn't dig that? Americans, but who else? Say It With Flowers. I'll read a little bit. All right. These are two people who are at the bar who do not understand each other. William T. Vollmann, and who I believe is a prostitute in Bangkok. She wants to speak with you, but she cannot, said the barmaid. Stroking her waist-length hair, I drew a heart on a sheet of paper, and she uttered a cry of joy. She wrote, I like you. I kissed her hands, and she pretended to push me away. I gave her my pen, and she drew a flower, and then a long-beaked bird. I drew a flower too. For an hour we constructed a garden on that greasy piece of paper, and she made that strangely happy noise of hers. Our flowers twined and gathered like the roots that the bat-winged fishes swam between, and we crafted each petal with the care of a reputable goldsmith, because we owed all the responsibilities of citizenship to this world of ours, which we were crowding with greenness and lemony-smelling bushes, on each a single yellow flower. In the center of that world we made a country where her shy spirit could dwell in the tea-dark shadows of tree tendons. Have you ever seen the cloud forests around Chiang Rai? Our country was steeper than those, that sheet of paper being a sheer white wall, and lusher, its hills bursting with wet leaves and trees bulging and bowing under the weight of their own fecundity. Really beautiful sort of sentiment at the core of that, just connecting with someone, and you can't even talk to them, but you create this emotional space where you interact with visual art. It's beautiful. I would say they're very much like Yasunari Kawabata's Palm of the Hand stories, but Yasunari Kawabata's Palm of the Hand stories typically will have of course, less of a focus on loneliness. They'll have more of a focus on maybe national commentary. They will typically not rely on metaphor like these. Kawabatas are very much narrative haiku. These are very much short stories in a more Western tradition. But yeah, I suppose I've just rambled on long enough. The Atlas, William T. Vollmann, it's a great friend to me in times of sadness, but also I go to this to really understand things like poverty and addiction. And of course, his nonfiction does the same thing, but these are great sort of narratives to connect with the people of this stuff rather than just these statistics. I'm sure the people are there in his nonfiction too, but I'd actually suggest this as a good way into Vollmann, the Atlas. And I'm going to go at this right now because I've been reading the first bit of You Bright and Risen Angels by William T. Vollmann. And this is a schizophrenic, a pretty enthralling, if schizophrenic read. So, I'm not sure I'm going to like this, but I'm really excited to find out if I hate it or not. But that's it. William T. Vollmann. Peace and groovy. Let me know what you think of him, by the way.